we'd have nothing to talk about when it comes to rugby, but Sonny Bill Williams has kindly given us something new to talk about with a hot topic here. Sonny Bill Williams castigating, lambasting Eddie Jones over his departure from Australia and his re-signing as the head coach of Japan's rugby union. Now, this report comes from Planet Rugby's David Skippers, and it's entitled, All Blacks legend Sonny Bill Williams launched a scathing attack on newly appointed Japan head coach Eddie Jones, saying he's a disgrace who obviously lied to Australian players and their fans. Well, let's break apart that headline. First off, All Blacks legend, Sonny Bill Williams is an incredible athlete and a fun rugby player to watch, but an All Blacks legend, that's a bit of a stretch. That's a bit of a stretch. I mean, first off, he's only 1/4 Kiwi. His dad's Samoan. His mom, what is all that noise? Good Lord. There's like a tractor or something rolling back there, making a lot of noise. You probably can't hear it, but I can. But his dad is Samoan. His mom is half Kiwi, half Australian, half Aussie. So he's 1/4 Kiwi. So an All Black legend, not exactly an All Black legend in his performance playing for the All Blacks either, but an incredible athlete, and I've always enjoyed him, and I was always a fan, despite his controversial stance and position. But Japan Rugby Football Union had announced earlier this week that they had re-signed Eddie Jones to be the head coach of Japan. Now, this comes after an atrocious showing as a Wallabies coach, his second stint as head of Rugby Australia, that union. Eddie Jones was signed 2023 to guide the Wallabies into the World Cup. And a coach in the middle, well, actually in the last few months of prepping for a World Cup, and it was a disaster. They didn't win any of their summer tests, and then they went into the World Cup and won just 2 games, and they weren't even impressive in those games. Excuse me. Now, during the World Cup, when he was interviewed, Eddie Jones was asked whether he was in negotiations with Japan to re-sign there while he was still the Wallabies coach. And he said, that's preposterous. Of course I'm not talking to them. I'm not. And after the Wallabies didn't even make the quarterfinal. Yeah, no, they were bounced out. And as a consequence, a lot of pressure back in Australia grew on Eddie Jones. Now, for folks who don't know, Eddie Jones is an Australian. His dad, I guess his mom is Japanese or half Japanese, and his dad is from Australia. But Eddie Jones, an Australian, who is signed with Japan once again. And Sonny Bill is not happy about it, folks. He's not happy about it. Now, as I said, Eddie repeatedly denied stories that he was in talks with Japan Rugby, but son of a gun, he signed with Japan Rugby. So Sonny Bill's comment that Eddie Jones lied probably got some merit to it. But the former New Zealand senator slammed Eddie Jones for his decision to omit, now this is his previous criticism before the World Cup and during it, for omitting experienced players like Michael Hooper, Quade Cooper, and Bernard Foley from the World Cup team, instead making a decision to go with a younger team and, kind of a little bit of hope and prayer to build Australian rugby going forward. Yeah, well, ever since Australia has treated Israel Folau in such an atrocious manner for his religious beliefs, that rugby union has just fallen on hard times. So it's the article by Dave Skipper says that Williams couldn't hide his displeasure when asked to comment on Japan rugby union coach, the 63-year-old Eddie Jones. Now, this will be Eddie's second stint there. He did coach previously and famously beat the Springboks at Brighton in the World Cup in 2015, a game I had a ticket for. What a disappointing day that was. But he coached Japan from 2002 to 2015. Now, this is a direct quote from Sonny Bill Williams. My thoughts on this whole saga is that he lied. He told Nine's Worldwide of Sports. He said, obviously, he lied to the players, he lied to the public, he lied to the Australian Rugby Union. What a disgrace. I guess that's my first point. That's what Sonny Bill Williams had to say about Eddie Jones. Now, of course, Jones had replaced Dave Rennie earlier in the year, as I said, and then in less than a year was supposed to take a team to the World Cup, a team that had performed abysmally for the past 4 years. Yeah. So, second, Sonny Bill said, second point would be, I feel sorry for Japan. His track record speaks for itself. Now, this is where Sonny Bill's comments begin to get a little bit silly and are just ad hominem attacks. Yes, in fact, Eddie Jones' record does speak for itself. Eddie Jones, incredibly successful, won a World Cup as an assistant coach with the Springboks. He has coached Japan to the quarterfinals, took a Tier 2 nation to Tier 1 status, defeated in the greatest upset in the history of rugby union, defeated the Springboks at Brighton. Really impressive work by Eddie Jones. Then he was signed to England. Of course, now I could be angry with Eddie Jones too, because he signed with the Stormers in Western Province. And then while I was at the World Cup, in the last game that I went to in the 2015 World Cup, which was the U.S. versus Japan, I think it was in Gloucester, if I remember correctly, at that game, Eddie came up from the pitch before the game started to go into the coach's seat, and he walked right past me. I was sitting at the end of the aisle, and I said, "Hey, Eddie." I reached my hand out and shook his hand. I said, "Hey, thanks for signing with Stormers. Appreciate it. Look forward to you having great success in Cape Town." He knew at that point that he'd already signed with England, because a week after he'd signed with the South African side. But you can't blame Eddie Jones. I mean, an opportunity to coach one of the most historic rugby unions in the world, or a provincial club side like the Stormers and Western Province. So I didn't blame him for that. I was disappointed, but I didn't blame him. So he signed with England, and what did he do with England? Sonny Bill, his track record is incredible. He immediately took the same team that Stuart Lancaster had, the exact same players, and implemented a new regime, and England went on an 18-game winning streak to tie the longest ever rugby union winning streak in history with the All Blacks. That's what Eddie Jones did. That's his track record, Sonny Bill. He also took England to the World Cup final against South Africa and Japan, defeating the mighty All Blacks, Sonny Bill, in a game that the All Blacks still haven't recovered from in Japan in 2019. England defeated them. They thrashed them, and they played their heart out, and then were defeated by the Springboks in the final. So yes, Eddie Jones' record does stand for success is on its own. It speaks for itself. He's an incredibly successful rugby coach. Now, is Eddie Jones abrasive? Oh yes, Eddie Jones is very abrasive. But so what? So what? Approach can be abrasive. Bobby Knight was incredibly abrasive as the Indiana basketball coach, but he was incredibly effective as a coach too. He just went a little too far. Woody Hayes was incredibly effective as the Ohio State football coach, but he got a little bit too far, eventually punching a player in a bowl game, and that was the end of his career. But he was incredibly effective as a coach. You don't have to be people's friends to be an effective coach. You just have to be effective. Anyway, Sonny Bill, his record does speak for itself. He's a winning coach. He's won everywhere he went except for the second stint in Australia. And blaming that on Eddie Jones, Bernard Foley and Michael Hooper and Quade Cooper in the World Cup, Australia wouldn't have performed much better. Let's be honest here. Stop the nonsense. People still keep going on about his selection for the World Cup. But were those three players going to get them into a quarterfinal or a semifinal or win the World Cup? No. You're smoking crack cocaine, buddy. That ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. They might have performed better. They would have beaten Fiji, but anyway. So, come on. Let's just be honest here. Anyway, so he said, Eddie's burned a lot of bridges. Well, that's true, Sonny Bill. He has burned a lot of bridges, but so have you. I'm a rugby league player, Rugby League World Cup. I'm a rugby union player. I'm a professional boxer. By the way, successful in all those things. Congratulations, Eddie. You're not Eddie. Sonny Bill, you're an entertaining athlete to watch. Really enjoyable. But you've burned a lot of bridges too, and you pissed a lot of people off yourself. So it's like the pot calling the kettle black here. He says, I'm a big believer in the proof is in the pudding. And what is his proof? His proof, he's been fired. Sacked from England in the last few years. He's burned a lot of bridges. Yeah, okay. Stay tuned. Bill Belichick is likely to get fired very soon in New England. Most successful coach in the past 4 decades in the National Football League, and he's about to get sacked after a ridiculously poor season and a third consecutive losing season for New England Patriots, a team that banks on excellence. You can be a great coach, but you don't always stay. Don Shula is eventually sacked too. He was removed. So it's just nonsense to listen to this sort of thing. He was sacked. People get fired for lots of reasons, Sonny Bill. It's the same thing that athletes don't get signed for reasons, or their contracts get terminated. The fact that he was sacked doesn't mean he's not a good coach, doesn't mean he's not effective. The fact he was sacked by England is they wanted to go in a different direction. And what did England do? No. They got to a semifinal, didn't they? But not to a final. And Eddie Jones took them to a final. They're pretty much the same team. And this is what he also had to say. He says, I actually feel sorry for Japan that they believe this guy is going to take them somewhere where his track record shows that he hasn't been able to do. It seems like he's a little bit out of touch with what's going on. What? Speaking of out of touch, Sonny Bill Williams, speaking of out of touch, did you miss the part where Eddie Jones took England on an 18-game win streak and won 6 nations and won test match after test match and took them to a World Cup final? Did you miss the part where he took Japan, a tier 2, also ran a rugby nation and turned it into a perennial tier 1 team now, and took them to the greatest upset in the history of rugby union and took them into a quarterfinal? Actually, in 2015, he didn't get to a quarterfinal. I was incorrect. Let me correct that. They finished 3-1 in their pool and did not advance. They did not get to the quarterfinal. My correction. They didn't get to the quarterfinal until 2019 when he wasn't the coach. So I misspoke there. I realized a few months ago I said that. Now, he didn't take them to a quarterfinal. He built the team that went to a quarterfinal, and another coach got to take them there. And then he took England to the final. So what are you talking about? You feel sorry for Japan. He was incredibly successful in Japan. They love him in Japan. He says, I guess I'm just speaking from an ex-player's point of view. I can never believe in someone that knew I was pretty much full of crap. Again, I like Sonny Bill Williams, but dude, you're the one who's full of crap here. You're absolutely full of crap. Absolutely full of crap. You don't like Eddie Jones. You don't like the way his tenure at the Wallabies was. Fine. But what's your skin in the game, Sonny Bill, other than you're a famous athlete? You're not Australian, are you? Are you Australian? I mean, 1/4 Australian, 1/4 Kiwi, and half Samoan. So pick a side, brother. And full of crap. Dude, you just said he's never accomplished anything, basically. He said Japanese culture is all built on respect, loyalty. That's things he's shown that he's not about. Well, there I can't argue with Sonny Bill. There is not much loyalty when it comes to Eddie Jones. We saw that when he signed with Western Cape and the Stormers, and a week later abandoned them to go sign with England. I don't fault him for that. I wasn't happy about it, but I understand the reasoning for it. You can't pass up an opportunity like that. It's only going to come once in a lifetime. And he was incredibly successful in England for most of his tenure there. So Sonny Bill's correct. Loyalty. But where's your loyalty, brother? Rugby league, rugby union, this club, that club, now you're a boxer, make up your mind. Where's your loyalty at? Anyway. He said, Eddie Jones has, Japanese culture. Now, this story, which has only been up for a couple hours, has already come under some withering criticism for Sonny Bill. And let me read you one of the comments from one of the people on this story, and this pretty much sums it up. He said, Eddie Jones has forgotten more about rugby than Sonny Boy has ever learned about it. The two men can't be equated. Sonny Bill Williams is an overhyped rugby part-timer who is as uncertain of his thoughts on rugby as he is of his religion. Ouch, now that was unnecessary. He might be a nice guy, I don't know, but he's a rugby has been and no longer newsworthy. He's a rugby has been and no longer newsworthy. Okay, well, aside from the ad hominem attack on his faith, which was unnecessary, of course, he wasn't born a Muslim. He converted to Islam in 2009 when he was playing in France. There's no need to attack his faith. It's his. But the rest of that is pretty funny and pretty accurate. A rugby has been and not newsworthy. And there was more withering, scathing criticism for Sonny Bill for his comments. Listen, people love to hate Eddie Jones. That's fine. He's caustic. He's difficult to be around. He's grumpy. He's moody. But he's effective. And you cannot blame him for the state of Australian rugby. Australia destroyed Australian rugby. They ignored it. They neglected it. And it declined. And it is atrocious right now. It's almost on par with the USA rugby. Did I say that out loud? No, it's really terrible. That was just a dig at Australia. It's really terrible. And you cannot blame Eddie Jones for that. Eddie Jones is not responsible for the decline in Australian rugby. Australia is responsible for it. The decision to bring him in to replace Dave Rennie in a World Cup year was a dumb, boneheaded idea by World Rugby. They should have just sucked it up, gone ahead with Dave Rennie, let him perform terribly, let him bring those has-been players in that are past it, let them play, and then start fresh after the World Cup. But instead, Eddie Jones is a convenient foil and scapegoat now for Rugby Australia's failures. That's the bottom line here. And we got people like, the 1/4 Kiwi, the 1/4 Aussie, the half Samoan. I'm not sure if I'm a rugby league player, a rugby union player, or a professional boxer, or a commentator, Sonny Bill Williams, now saying that Eddie Jones lied. Whatever. Bottom line here is that, like him, love him, doesn't matter. Eddie Jones is effective, and it really doesn't matter what you or I think, or certainly doesn't matter what Sonny Bill Williams thinks. He's now the national coach for Japan, and expect to see the Brave Blossoms improve after their very difficult post-2019 era. The COVID was devastating to Japan rugby, and they have not recovered. They finally started to find their form midway through the World Cup and nearly got into a quarterfinal, which would have been awesome to see, but they didn't get there. Anyway, folks, there you have it. There's my thoughts on Sonny Bill Williams. This is not an attack on Sonny Bill Williams. Let's be very clear. I like Sonny Bill Williams. I think he's very entertaining. He's a fun player to watch when it comes to rugby. I like his multi-sport versatility, and he's an interesting character. But he's also a guy who's had a problem with drugs. He's also a guy that's had a problem with women. He's a guy that's got a problem with his mouth. And here his mouth is writing checks that he can't sign. But again, it's, I guess, an opportunity to remain relevant when it comes to the news and rugby. So thank you, Sonny Bill, for your scathing attack on Eddie Jones. It gave me something interesting to talk about today. And perhaps people will watch this and will get their feelings. Folks, be sure to leave a like behind on the video if you don't mind. Share it with friends. Put it on social media if you don't mind. And, if you want to leave a comment behind, you're welcome to. And if you think I attacked Sonny Bill Williams, you didn't listen here. If you think I attacked Eddie Jones, you didn't listen here. What I did is I told the story of how Sonny Bill Williams is now criticizing Eddie Jones for lying to Australian rugby, and to the Australian people. And as I said, Eddie Jones is a convenient scapegoat for the failures of Rugby Australia. And that's the bottom line. Catch you next time. News coming up here shortly on the program. Thanks a lot, folks. Appreciate your participation and your viewership. Take care. Cheers.